"You don't belong here." That's the first thing she said. Aiden Sinclair froze, boarding pass still in his hand. He had just stepped into the first-class cabin, seat 1A, clearly printed on his ticket, when the flight attendant, a woman in her mid-40s with a sharp bun and sharper eyes, blocked his path like a security checkpoint. Passengers turned to stare. "I'm sorry," Aiden asked, his voice quiet but steady. The woman didn't even look at the pass. "That seat is assigned to a premium client. Please step back." "But this is my seat." "It's printed right here," Aiden said, gently holding up his ticket. The attendant's lips tightened. "Let's not make this difficult, okay? I don't know how you got this boarding pass, but we'll have to reassign you." She said it loud enough for the entire front cabin to hear. 7 rows of polished shoes, tailored jackets, and expensive watches looked up, not with sympathy, with curiosity, with judgment, with that silent question, how did this kid sneak in here? 7 minutes later, that same cabin would sit empty. The entire flight would be grounded, and every employee on board would be suspended. Tell us where you're watching from, and what you would have done in Aiden's place. 15 minutes earlier, Seattle-Tacoma International was still waking up when Aiden arrived at Gate 12. He moved like he always did, in his own rhythm, quietly, head down, hoodie up. No designer luggage, just a gray backpack stitched with a small patch. Ethics over ego. He looked like any other teenager flying alone, except he wasn't. He was the son of Dr. Naomi Sinclair, co-founder of SkyGrid, a system that silently monitored flight crews' ethical behavior across 48 federal airports. Aiden wasn't just flying to DC for fun. He was being honored at the National Ethics and AI Youth Summit for his work testing behavior flags and biometric response models. But the flight attendant didn't know that, and she didn't care. "Excuse me, miss," Aiden had said as he stepped onto the plane, offering his boarding pass. The woman glanced at it, then looked him up and down. "This can't be right." "It's seat 1A. That's first class." "Yes, ma'am." There was a pause, just long enough to humiliate. Then came the phrase, "I'm going to have to ask you to move to economy. You're not cleared for this section." She didn't even check the manifest. She just knew. Aiden didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He just asked one question. "Why?" And the answer came like a slap. "Because that seat belongs to someone who flies with us often and fits the profile." Fits the profile. She didn't mean frequent flyer. She meant someone who looks the part. As Aiden made his way to the back of the plane, seat 35E, right beside the restroom and a toddler who was already screaming, he didn't feel rage. He felt something worse, that numb, heavy kind of shame that sinks deep into your gut. The kind that doesn't come from being yelled at. The kind that comes from being silently judged by everyone around you. Passengers whispered as he walked by. "That kid thought he was first class? Probably clicked the wrong cabin during booking. His mom must work for the airline or something." He sat down, pulled his backpack to his chest, and stared out the window. Then, quietly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a device no bigger than a thumb drive. It wasn't on the market yet. His mother had built it as part of her SkyGrid ethics research. Aiden was one of 5 beta testers in the country allowed to carry a SkyGrid node reader, a tool that monitored passive ethical breaches in real time. And what just happened? It qualified. Aiden powered the device on. The screen lit up. Ethics violation detected. Social discrimination. Profile-based seat reassignment. Flag this flight. Y-N. He hesitated, just for a moment. Then tapped Y. The screen blinked once, then shut off. 7 minutes later. In a high-security room at the FAA's Systems Oversight Division in Washington, D.C., a red alert pulsed across the SkyGrid live monitor. Alert. Flight 147, SkyGrid Ethics Failure Violation Category. Tier 3. Passive discriminatory action by staff trigger source. Verified beta device ID. Number 0041. Naomi Sinclair, seated at the command desk, leaned forward. She didn't need to guess. Only one person in the world carried that ID, her son. She reviewed the automatic biometric data collected by the node. Elevated heart rate during confrontation. Drop in pupil dilation during verbal shutdown. Heat signature spike during public redirection. All signs of public humiliation under implied authority. She narrowed her eyes, then tapped a command on her console. Activate biometric ethics strike. Level 1. Status. Confirmed effect. Suspend flight operation. Lock airline's SkyGrid access. Alert ethics review board. Within 30 seconds, Flight 147's airspace clearance was revoked. 152 pending flights across the same airline lost SkyGrid compliance, and the system publicly flagged the flight crew as under investigation for protocol violation. Back on the plane, passengers were just beginning to settle in when the overhead speaker crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been notified of a technical delay. We'll be returning to the gate shortly." Gasps, grumbles, confusion. Aiden didn't move. He just sat in seat 35E, calm. Then, slowly, a small smile flickered at the corner of his lips. The flight hadn't moved an inch. The seatbelt sign was still off. The air was still filled with that artificial lemon-scented air conditioning. But a tension now hung across the cabin like an invisible wire. People felt it, without knowing why. Captain Harris didn't know either. At least not yet. Up in the cockpit, Captain Harris had just finished his pre-flight checklist when the notification lit up on the flight console. SkyGrid compliance hold, active. Level 1 ethics violation detected. His co-pilot, Jenna, blinked twice. "What?" "Must be a system glitch," Harris muttered. "We've never gotten one of these before." He tapped the intercom button and spoke calmly to the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the delay. We're working with ground control on a small technical hiccup. Please stay seated as we sort it out." But in his head, alarms were going off. SkyGrid strikes weren't hiccups. They were catastrophic red flags. And Level 1 meant the system had flagged an in-flight ethics breach serious enough to suspend an airline's biometric clearance nationwide. Back in seat 35E, Aiden knew. He wasn't smiling anymore. Not because he felt guilty, but because he understood exactly what came next. This wasn't revenge. This was response. He opened the SkyGrid node once more, watching the screen flicker as downstream effects started showing up in real time. 112 flights, cleared for boarding, now paused. 38 airports, locked airline access under ethics audit. 870 M in ESG funding, temporarily frozen. He hadn't triggered those directly. His device only sent a flag. But his mother had activated the strike. He felt a mix of emotions, shock, awe, and something harder to define. Responsibility. 3 floors underground in Washington, D.C. The FAA Ethics Systems Command Center was no longer quiet. Naomi Sinclair stood before a massive curved screen showing the ripple effects moving through airport networks like a virus. One assistant whispered, "Ma'am, 152 flights just dropped off the SkyGrid active roster." Another added, "Social media is catching wind. #SkyStrike is trending." Naomi didn't flinch. She simply asked, "Has the airline CEO been notified?" A pause. Then a voice responded from the speaker. "He's on the line. Transferring now." 3,000 miles away, inside a penthouse office in Chicago, Gerald Weston, CEO of Clearwind Airlines, had been mid-breakfast when the alert came through. He'd barely bitten into his poached egg when his assistant barged in. "Sir, we just lost flight clearance on over 150 of our aircraft. FAA's on line 1. Something about SkyGrid protocol." Weston shot up from his chair. "SkyGrid? I thought we passed all audits this quarter." "They're saying it came from a Tier 2 biometric flag, escalated by Naomi Sinclair herself." "Naomi," he exhaled. "The ethics architect." He took the call. "Mr. Weston," Naomi's voice came through crisp and calm. "Your airline is now under federal review." "Why? What the hell happened?" "Flight 147. one of your crew members removed a minor from his assigned first-class seat based on non-compliant profiling. The flag was verified and submitted using a Tier 2 ethics device. And you're telling me this justifies grounding our entire East Coast operation? Yes, she said flatly. Because if you don't comply, you lose access to the biometric registry required by 48 airports. I'm enforcing a biometric ethics strike. A long pause. Do you even understand what kind of damage this causes? Weston asked, trying to keep his tone from tipping into rage. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She simply said, "Tell that to the boy your flight attendant humiliated." Back on Flight 1047, the mood had shifted from mild confusion to near panic. Flight attendant Linda had just been called to the cockpit. Her face was pale when she returned. Another crew member whispered, "They're recalling every flight staff linked to this manifest." "What do you mean? Like grounded?" "No, suspended. Effective immediately." Linda's knees almost buckled. She glanced toward the back of the plane and caught Aiden's eyes. He didn't glare. He didn't smirk. He just looked calm, and that terrified her more than if he'd screamed. The pilot returned to the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unexpected operational issue, we will be deplaning shortly. Please remain seated until instructed." A groan rolled through the cabin like thunder. But in the first few rows, where Aiden had been humiliated just 15 minutes ago, there was silence. The woman who had taken his seat now looked down, uncomfortable. She hadn't asked for it, but she hadn't objected either. A few passengers glanced over their shoulders toward the back, unsure how this quiet teenager had triggered such a storm. Down on the tarmac, 2 white vehicles pulled up beside the aircraft. One belonged to TSA Ethics Division. The other bore the crest of the Department of Transportation. And then came the moment no one expected. Every member of the flight crew was escorted off the plane, one, by ethics agents. No shouting, no handcuffs, just quiet public accountability. Passengers were instructed to leave their bags and exit the aircraft. As they shuffled toward the exit, Aiden stood up with his backpack. As he stepped off the plane, a ground agent asked politely, "Sir, are you Aiden Sinclair?" He nodded. "I've been asked to escort you to the airport ethics lounge. Your mother is on the line." He followed the agent without a word, while dozens of passengers watched in stunned silence, trying to figure out what just happened. Inside the lounge, Aiden was handed a private line. "Hi, Mom," he said. Naomi's voice came through steady. "You okay?" "Yeah, you did the right thing." "I didn't know it would go this far," he admitted. "It had to," she said. "Sometimes systems don't change until someone presses hard enough." He took a breath. "So, what happens now?" Naomi's tone sharpened. "We're not done. This was just containment." "Meaning?" "Tomorrow morning," she said, "you and I are testifying before the FAA board to introduce a new national policy, the Ethics Flight Standard." Aiden wasn't nervous. Not yet. But as the elevator doors slid open and he stepped into the FAA executive hearing floor, a chill crept up his spine. The air was sterile, still. There were no windows, just a long corridor lined with frosted glass doors and a silence too heavy for a Monday morning. At the end of the hall, Room 404, Ethics Compliance Review Board. His name was already on the docket. Naomi placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" He nodded, but it felt like someone else's head was doing the motion. "Just speak the truth," she said. "That's all they can't twist." Inside, a U-shaped desk wrapped around the center of the room like a courtroom without a jury box. 7 members of the Federal Ethics Consortium sat waiting. Men and women who normally operated quietly behind the scenes, shaping policies that airlines feared more than weather forecasts. Each had a nameplate. Each had a reputation. But none had ever questioned a teenage boy before. Aiden took his seat in the center with Naomi beside him. The chair felt 2 sizes too big. The table too wide. And the silence? crushing. Until the lead official, Director Helen Trask, spoke. Mr. Aidan Sinclair, your biometric ethics node flagged a Level 3 violation aboard Clearwind Flight 1047, correct? Yes, ma'am. You're aware that your device triggered a chain reaction affecting 152 flights, 3 airline consortiums, and temporarily froze over $870 million in operational assets? Aidan swallowed. Yes. And what, Trask leaned forward, exactly gave you the authority to submit that flag? Aidan didn't flinch. The same system your board approved last year. He tapped his device on the table. SkyGrid. You approved live testing for 5 miners under biometric stress environments. I was one of them. The room went still. Then Trask leaned back and crossed her arms. Well then, Mr. Sinclair, walk us through what happened. In your words. So, he told them. Every second, every detail. The moment he was told, you don't belong here. The way her eyes didn't even check his boarding pass. The way she ushered in another passenger like he was invisible. And how he sat in seat 35E, not angry, but heavy. I didn't do it to punish anyone, Aidan said. I flagged the moment because the system asked me, was this an ethics breach? And in that moment, yeah, it was. One of the board members, a man named Wendell Moss, cleared his throat. Why didn't you just tell someone on board? A supervisor? Aidan looked straight at him. Would they have believed a 15-year-old? The room was silent. Then came Naomi's turn. She didn't posture. She didn't smile. She simply projected authority like it was coded into her DNA. SkyGrid was never meant to punish, she began. It was designed to illuminate. She pointed to the screen behind her, where biometric readings played like an animated story. Aidan's elevated heart rate, his drop in oxygen, the humiliation triggers. We use black boxes for aircraft, she said. SkyGrid is the black box for humanity. She let that sink in, then added, and yesterday, your system failed my son. The questioning lasted nearly 2 hours. Board members rotated. They pressed for intent, clarity, precedent. But what became clear by the end was this. Aidan didn't just follow the rules. He proved why the rules mattered. As the room recessed for deliberation, Naomi and Aidan stepped into a side lounge. Aidan exhaled for the first time. Naomi poured him a glass of water. You did good, he nodded, staring at his hands. Then, almost whispering, he asked, do you think they'll actually change anything? Naomi looked at him, not as a mother, as a reformer. I think you just became the reason they'll have to. 2 hours later, the board reconvened. Director Trask adjusted her mic. The Federal Ethics Consortium has voted unanimously to endorse an emergency recommendation. She turned toward Naomi and Aidan. Effective immediately, the FAA will require all major carriers to adopt ethics flight standard protocols based on the SkyGrid framework. A murmur rippled across the room, including live biometric monitoring of crew and passenger interactions for compliance scoring. Another member added, failure to maintain a minimum ethics score will result in suspension of federal terminal access. And just like that, a teenager's experience became the cornerstone of a national law. Later that night, Aidan sat on the balcony of their DC hotel, legs crossed, watching the city lights blink in silence. He'd said maybe 500 words the whole day, but his actions had spoken volumes. Naomi joined him, holding 2 mugs of tea. You feel different? She asked. He gave a tired smile. I feel like I tripped into history class. She chuckled. That's about right. Then he turned serious. Why me, though? What do you mean? I mean, there were 100 ways that day could have gone. 100 people who've probably been treated worse. But I had the device, I got the flag, and now all this changed because of me. Naomi placed her hand gently over his. Aidan, sometimes God doesn't pick the loudest person. Sometimes he picks the quietest one willing to do the right thing when no one's watching. Aidan nodded. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in his life, he knew exactly who he was. By Tuesday morning, the headline had already circled the globe. 15-year-old boy flagged ethics violation. FAA adopts historic passenger rights law overnight. And just beneath it, a photo of Aiden, mid-step, walking out of the FAA building with Naomi beside him. His face wasn't smiling. He wasn't raising a fist. He looked like what he was, a kid who did something because it felt right. At 7:03 a.m., their hotel room phone rang. Naomi picked it up, listened, and mouthed to Aiden, "Press conference. They want you, now." Aiden blinked. "Me?" Naomi gave a quick nod, already pulling her blazer off the hanger. "Brush your teeth, fix your collar, and don't say more than 3 times." The lobby of the FAA press hall was chaos by 8 a.m. Cameras, microphones, interns running cables, staffers prepping cue cards. Reporters from The Times, CNN, The Guardian, even NHK Tokyo. Aiden's story had hit a nerve, and not just in America. The sky grid flag he'd triggered had become a symbol, not of rebellion, but of quiet resistance, of clarity in the face of humiliation, of tech being used to protect dignity, not harvest data. At the podium, FAA spokesperson Karen Westfield spoke first. Yesterday, thanks to one young man's courage and clarity, the FAA recognized a blind spot in our accountability infrastructure. She turned to Aiden. "And today, we begin fixing it." Applause broke out. Cameras clicked. Then Karen stepped aside. "Aiden, would you like to say something?" Aiden approached the mic like it might bite him. He wasn't a speaker. He wasn't loud. He just talked. "I didn't plan for any of this," he began. "I was just flying home." Pause. "A flight attendant told me I didn't belong where I was sitting, even though my boarding pass said 1A. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just sat somewhere else." Another pause. But later, the SkyGrid app asked if I'd experienced a breach of ethics. And in that moment, I just told the truth. He looked up at the crowd. "I didn't know it would flag the flight. I didn't know it would affect so many people. But I do know that if we don't speak up, the silence becomes permission." Dead silence. Then, applause. From the press. From staff. Even a few FAA board members sitting quietly in the back. Within hours, the clip had been viewed over 12 million times. Naomi's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Major news anchors replayed his speech every hour. Hashtags like #Aiden flagged it and #Ethics Matters trended in 11 countries. But beneath the noise, something else was stirring. Something corporate. Across the country, inside a glassy skyscraper at Clearwind Airlines Executive HQ, the mood was tense. CEO Garrett Lowe stood silently as legal counsel played back Aiden's full testimony. The cabin, the confrontation, the biometric trigger, the press conference. By the time it ended, no one spoke. Until the compliance director finally muttered, "We're exposed." Garrett narrowed his eyes. "How bad?" "Bad," the man said flatly. Turns out the attendant, Maria Danes, was following an unspoken prioritization protocol. Internal training from 2020, verbal, no official documentation, but enough of the team knows it exists. Garrett's face went pale. "The substitution policy?" The man nodded. "We pulled old internal memos. There's reference to guest optics management, which includes vague guidelines about reallocating VIP seats when a preferred profile customer arrives late." "You mean," Garrett's voice was tight, "when the passenger looks more like a CEO than a 15-year-old boy?" That afternoon, an anonymous email hit the inbox of The Intercept. Attached, a leaked training audio file from Clearwind Airlines, featuring a senior staff member saying, "If someone young or underdressed is in first class and a high-value customer needs a seat, you swap them. Quietly. No confrontation." Boom! By 3:40 p.m., it was headline news. Leaked audio reveals airlines quietly remove teens from first class to protect optics. The Intercept. By 4:15, the FAA called for an industry-wide ethics audit. By 5:30, Clearwind's stock dropped 7.2%. By 6 o'clock, Naomi's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a reporter. It was the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. That evening, Naomi stood on the hotel balcony with Aiden again, just like the night before. But tonight, she was quiet. "Something wrong?" Aiden asked. She shook her head slowly. "Not wrong, just fast." Aiden sipped his tea. "I didn't mean for any of this." "I know," she said. "But the people who did mean for it, they're sweating now." He gave a small smile, then asked, "Are we in danger?" She looked at him. "No, but we are visible now, and when you're visible, you have to decide what kind of light you want to shine." Aiden looked out over DC. For the first time in his life, he felt like the world wasn't too big. It was just beginning to notice him. It didn't take long for the cracks to deepen. By Wednesday morning, the leaked audio had gone viral. Every major outlet was running some version of the same story. Clearwind Airlines had an unspoken policy to remove non-optical passengers from first class, and Aiden, unknowingly, had exposed it. Naomi was already preparing for the next phase. Not PR, not spin, leverage. She walked into the studio at GBC Morning Live in a navy suit, hair tied back, no makeup beyond foundation and balm. Across from her sat Martin Keeler, Clearwind's general counsel, a man known for never raising his voice, never admitting fault, and always settling. He smiled like a lawyer did, calm, polished, unreadable. The host introduced them both, then dove in. "Dr. Sinclair, you represent SkyGrid Systems, which flagged the ethics breach. Mr. Keeler, your airline is now under investigation for discriminatory prioritization. Do either of you accept responsibility for what happened to 15-year-old Aiden Sinclair?" Martin cleared his throat first. "We deeply regret the discomfort Mr. Sinclair experienced. However, I must clarify, there is no written policy authorizing such seat changes based on appearance or age." Naomi didn't blink. "You don't need a written policy for bias. You just need silence." And Clearwind trained that silence well. The host leaned forward. "Dr. Sinclair, are you suggesting this isn't the first time?" Naomi pulled a slim folder from her bag. No theatrics, no flourish. Just placed it on the table and opened it. Inside, a 2019 civil lawsuit filed in California. Plaintiff, Elias Navarro, age 13. Charge, wrongful removal from first class for an older business class upgrade. Result, confidential settlement. "They buried it," Naomi said. "No one in the public ever saw this, but we did." SkyGrid cross-referenced historical ethics data and flagged patterns of similar removals. Children, elderly, minority passengers, especially when traveling alone. Martin went quiet. So did the room. The host adjusted his mic. "Are you saying Clearwind has a systemic pattern of bias based on appearance?" "I'm saying this isn't new. What's new is that someone finally left a trail." By noon, the lawsuit was front-page news. The hashtag #Elias was first trended worldwide. And then something unexpected happened. Other passengers came forward. A former teacher from Boston, a grandmother from Atlanta, a biracial teen who posted her boarding pass next to a photo of her standing in coach. Each had been moved, questioned, or stared down, not because they misbehaved, but because they didn't look like they belonged up front. What Naomi had warned was now undeniable. Clearwind wasn't just a company with a bad moment. It was a company built on the illusion of order and the quiet shaming of those who disrupted that illusion. Inside Clearwind HQ, the boardroom was tense. CEO Garrett Lowe paced while legal and PR scrambled. The VP of Compliance held up her phone. "The Ethics Compliance Index just downgraded us to non-compliant." Garrett stopped cold. "What? That's internal." "Not anymore. SkyGrid's emergency override went live 2 hours ago, and because we're listed in the Federal Aviation Network, all our affiliate airports got pinged." She scrolled. 12 airports are suspending our premium terminal access until our ethics score rises. Another exec chimed in. 4 major investors just froze funding. One of them posted the hashtag, "We're bleeding." Garrett turned to his assistant. "Where's Keeler?" "Still at the studio." Garrett exhaled slowly, then said something no one expected. "Call Naomi Sinclair, now." But Naomi didn't pick up. She was busy, at a quiet cafe, debriefing with Aiden. "Why'd you go on air with that lawsuit?" he asked, sipping ginger ale. Naomi didn't answer right away. She let the question settle, then said, "Because people forget patterns, but they remember names." She slid her phone across the table. On it, a list of 54 flagged incidents in the past 4 years, all from Clearwind flights, all involving passenger removals from first class under vague circumstances. "We built SkyGrid to protect people, not punish companies. But sometimes, protecting means exposing." Aiden leaned forward. "Are they going to fire people?" "Maybe, but that's not the win." "Then what is?" Naomi looked at him. "Making sure they can't do it again, not just Clearwind, all of them." And just like that, the next phase began. By sunset, Naomi and her ethics team had drafted a document, the Passenger Integrity Framework, a nationwide charter designed to standardize how airlines assess crew conduct, passenger treatment, and data ethics. And she wasn't submitting it for review. She was submitting it to Congress. At 8:30 p.m., the FAA held an emergency press conference. As of tonight, the FAA is suspending all flight reallocation practices not logged within SkyGrid's real-time ethics ledger. Airlines that fail to comply within 72 hours will be classified as high risk and lose access to federal terminals. Clearwind Airlines is the first to receive this designation. Aiden sat on the edge of the hotel bed, remote in hand, watching the whole thing live. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He just whispered to himself, "They finally saw it." Then, almost like a quiet prayer, he added, "Let it be enough." Aiden sat on the balcony alone, feet tucked up on the wicker chair, watching the lights of DC flicker like restless stars. He should have been asleep, but something gnawed at him. Not fear, not guilt, just a strange ache. Like he was walking toward something big, and everyone else seemed to know more about it than he did. Inside the suite, Naomi was working. Again, legal drafts, compliance memos, news interviews. The fallout from the Passenger Integrity Framework rollout had kept her phone buzzing non-stop. But that wasn't what made her anxious tonight. It was a text she hadn't replied to, from a contact saved only as CC, Legacy Tier. The message was simple. "We saw the press release. If the kid triggers another override, SkyGrid's backbone will crack. Pull him out now, or we will." She didn't show Aiden the message. Not yet. He was already carrying too much. But she did pull out a locked case from her travel satchel, matte black, fingerprint coated, and never opened unless the situation called for it. Tonight, it did. Inside, a slim folder marked MW, Archive, Private. Aiden's father, Michael Ward. The name she hadn't spoken aloud in years. Naomi looked down at the folder, then over to the balcony. "He's ready," she thought, "and he deserves the truth." "Aiden," she said softly. He turned. "Yeah? Come inside for a second. I want to show you something." He followed, barefoot on the carpet. She handed him the folder. He stared at it, then up at her. "What is this?" "Your father's code." They sat together on the couch while Aiden flipped through the documents. Architectural sketches, API flowcharts, old FAA briefing slides, a design doc from 2015 labeled Project Lighthouse, Ethics Protocol for Civil Aviation. He blinked. "SkyGrid started before I was even in middle school?" Naomi nodded slowly. "Your dad built the core architecture. He didn't finish it. He died before deployment. But he gave me the map." Aiden ran his fingers across a yellowed schematic labeled Real-Time Passenger Ethics Scoring Algorithm. So, the override I triggered was his legacy. Silence. Not heavy. Reverent. Aiden exhaled like someone who'd just been handed a map to a maze he didn't know he was in. Then he asked, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Naomi folded her hands in her lap. "Because when people know what you carry, they either try to steal it or destroy it." "And you think they're trying now?" Naomi didn't answer right away. She just opened her phone and showed him the message from CC. Aiden's jaw clenched. "Who are they?" "Corporate coalition. Investors. Some are ex-regulators. They don't want ethics to control access. They want market data to control it." He looked down. "They'll kill the system, if we let them." The next morning, Naomi took Aiden to SkyGrid's remote testing facility, 40 minutes outside DC, disguised as an old FAA training hangar. Inside, rows of screens, live feeds from over 120 airports, digital heat maps of crew packs interactions, and something Aiden hadn't seen before, a deep ethics mirror, showing how real-time decisions could spike or sink a flight's ethics score. Aiden stepped forward. "It looks alive." "It is," Naomi said. "It adapts." She guided him to a private control panel marked Core Manual Authentication Channel. "Only 2 people ever had access to this, me and your dad." She placed his hand on the sensor. The screen flashed green. "Access granted. Ward Sinclair Protocol. Live." That night, Aiden couldn't sleep again, but this time, it wasn't ache, it was clarity. He understood now. This wasn't about a single seat. This was about how the world decides who gets to sit where. It wasn't just flight attendants. It was culture, systems, silent scripts written by invisible hands. He thought about the kids who'd been moved, the grandmother, the teacher, the silence. Then he opened his laptop. He drafted a short statement and posted it to his new verified account. "I didn't create SkyGrid, but I carry the name of the one who did. My father believed dignity was worth coding into the system. So do I." The post blew up in minutes. By morning, Hat Son of SkyGrid was trending in 15 countries. Meanwhile, in a different city, an emergency meeting was taking place. 6 men in tailored suits sat around a polished table. At the head, a woman with silver hair and a voice that could cut glass. "We warned Sinclair. Now the boy's gone public. The override access must be disabled." One man spoke up. "If we touch the grid now, FAA will see it. Not if we use the latency patch." Another nodded. "Then we ghost the signal, route it through compliant sublayers, no fingerprints. And the boy? He won't know until it's too late." Back in DC, Naomi's dashboard lit up. SkyGrid had detected a ghost ping, a signal trying to reroute ethics scores through an unauthorized patch. Her face went still. It started. Aiden stood beside her, reading the alert. "What do we do?" She looked up, eyes sharp. "We fight them with what your father gave us, and this time we don't hide." The seatbelt light blinked on with a dull ding. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We'll be taking off shortly from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. Estimated flight time, 5 hours and 10 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight with Clearwind Airlines." Aiden stared out the window. The irony was almost too much. The same airline that humiliated him 2 weeks ago, now flying him and Naomi back to California for a congressional ethics hearing. Naomi sat beside him in 3A, tapping into her SkyGrid terminal via a secure line. Aiden's fingers hovered over the screen of his private tablet. The interface read, "SkyGrid Shield System, Standby Mode. For use in case of suspected sabotage, forced override, or high-risk ethics breach in progress." It wasn't just a firewall. It was a live defense mechanism, designed by his father, never publicly activated. Until now. 3 rows up, in 1D, a man opened his laptop and discreetly slid a cable into the port under the seat tray. He wore a Clearwind lapel pin, but he wasn't staff. Not really. He typed a few lines of code, eyes scanning the cabin every few seconds. Then he hit enter. At that moment, SkyGrid's server log blinked red. Naomi saw it first. Unauthorized routing attempt detected. Source: in-flight system, cabin, CF-47, row 1D, priority, high. She whispered, "They're doing it now." Aiden leaned in. "From this flight?" She nodded. "They're hijacking SkyGrid from within. They want to reroute the ethics signal so we can't detect crew violations mid-flight. Then we stop it." She handed him her secure key. "You'll need dual authentication. Are you ready?" Aiden didn't blink. "Yes." The next few minutes happened in heartbeats. Aiden tapped in both his and Naomi's access credentials. The tablet displayed, "Initiate SkyGrid Shield. Warning, live flight data override. This action will activate federal ethics lock on current airline network. Proceed? Yes. No." He pressed yes. Instantly, cabin lights flickered. The in-flight screens glitched, then turned blue. Then a new message appeared in every seatback monitor. "This flight has been flagged for an ethics compliance audit. FAA has been notified. Please remain calm. This will not delay your journey." The cabin buzzed with confusion. Flight attendants huddled near the galley. A tall male crew member whispered, "What the hell is this?" Another replied, "It's SkyGrid. They're running a mid-flight audit. I thought that wasn't possible." It wasn't. Meanwhile, in 1D, the man with the laptop froze. His screen had gone dark. Connection severed. A blue fingerprint flashed on screen with one word: traceable. He shut the laptop fast and stood to head to the restroom. But 2 rows behind him, a federal marshal quietly rose and blocked the aisle. "Sir, I'm going to need you to take your seat. Now." He didn't resist. He knew they were burned. In the cockpit, the pilot's headset crackled. "This is FAA Priority Control. Flight 4792 has activated the SkyGrid Shield protocol. Please confirm status and maintain transparency. We are dispatching federal investigators to meet you at SFO." The captain's voice was tight but calm. "Understood." He turned to his co-pilot. "We've just become the most watched flight in America." Back in row 3, Aiden stared at the real-time feed on Naomi's tablet. He could see their aircraft as a blinking blue dot on a map, surrounded by digital airspace, colored green, yellow, and red based on ethics volatility. Their flight was now locked in Tier 1 compliance mode. "Every decision they make from this point on is recorded," Naomi explained. "No excuses, no cover-ups, not anymore." Aiden's heart was racing, but it wasn't fear. It was conviction. For once, he wasn't just reacting. He was defining the rules. The ripple effect was instant. CNN cut into programming. Hashtags surged. SkyGrid Shield / Flight 4792 audit. Airline stock prices began to dip. At Clearwind headquarters, panic set in. "They did it on board?" one board member shouted. "Live override mid-flight? That's not possible." The head of IT stammered. Unless someone inside knew how to activate the shield manually." A different voice spoke, quietly. "There's only one person who could have done that." They all turned to the wall display, where Aiden's SkyGrid avatar now stood front and center. At SFO, law enforcement lined the jet bridge. As passengers disembarked, several crew members were escorted aside. One flight attendant, visibly shaking, muttered, "We didn't even know we were being watched." Aiden stepped off the plane last, walking beside Naomi. A TSA official held out a hand. "Mr. Sinclair, FAA ethics panel is waiting for you." Aiden looked up. They'll get what they came for. 3 hours later, he stood in a congressional subcommittee hearing room, live-streamed, broadcast nationwide. "I'm not here because I'm special," he began. "I'm here because someone once said I didn't belong up front. But dignity isn't something you earn by age, race, or wallet size. Dignity should come standard." He paused. "My father believed that. He wrote it into code. And today, we proved it could work." The room was silent. Then the chairman leaned forward. "Mr. Sinclair, what do you want next?" Aiden looked him straight in the eye. "Full adoption, across all airlines, mandatory SkyGrid Shield deployment, so no one, not a single child, veteran, or grandmother, ever has to prove they belong again." The cameras flashed, the crowd stirred, and a quiet, irreversible shift began. What started with one removed boy in seat 1A had become a movement no one could ignore. Aiden's phone buzzed. Again. He glanced down, expecting another SkyGrid update. Instead, it was a headline. "SkyGrid faces sabotage claims. Was the ethics lock used as corporate revenge?" He tossed the phone face down on the table. This was the third article in under an hour, and all of them had the same undertone: doubt. Despite the victory on Flight 4792, despite the congressional applause, someone, or some group, was already spinning the story. They weren't just challenging the data. They were questioning his intentions. Naomi paced the length of the penthouse suite they'd rented in San Francisco, Bluetooth headset in one ear, tablet in her hand. "Lock the authorization log," she told the SkyGrid team. "Every override, every access point since the launch. I want a chain of custody before sunrise." Aiden sat near the window, watching the clouds drift past the Golden Gate. He spoke without looking up. "They're coming after it." Naomi didn't answer right away, but he knew she knew. That evening, Aiden was scheduled to appear on a live ethics panel at Stanford, alongside lawmakers, tech leaders, and educators. He didn't want to go, but Naomi insisted. "If they control the narrative, they control the outcome. But what if I say the wrong thing?" She looked at him. "Then say the real thing." The auditorium was packed. A row of cameras pointed at the stage. Professors whispered behind notepads. A few teenagers in the front row held signs that read, "Dignity is a right." Aiden sat stiffly in his chair. The moderator began. "Let's talk about trust. SkyGrid claims to detect unethical treatment in real time, but who decides what's unethical?" The question came pointed, sharp. Aiden didn't flinch. "The system doesn't decide. It reflects. It uses patterns, behavior histories, flag criteria, all created in consultation with civil rights groups, passenger advocacy panels, and safety boards. SkyGrid doesn't judge. It records. What we do with that data is the real conversation." A few heads nodded. One panelist scribbled furiously. Then another question. "What if the system itself gets manipulated?" That one hit harder. Aiden hesitated. "Then the system has to be able to detect intrusion, which is why we built fail-safes." What he didn't say, what he didn't want to say, was that those fail-safes had just blinked red. Back at the hotel, Naomi's encrypted dashboard was flashing. Alert, anomaly in real-time ethics log, stream, node 38A. Unauthorized data injection attempt detected, source unknown. She froze. "No," she whispered. "Not again." She tapped into the node diagnostics. Someone wasn't just trying to view SkyGrid data, they were trying to rewrite it. Meanwhile, Aiden returned to the suite, exhausted, tie loosened, hair a mess. Naomi barely looked up as she said, "They breached the edge nodes." He froze. "How far?" "Just one terminal so far, a regional node in Phoenix. But if they replicate the exploit, they could inject false ethics data, frame passengers, hide violations, rewrite history." Aiden rubbed his eyes. "Can we isolate it?" Naomi nodded. "But we'll need access to a root clean room, manual inspection." She paused. "And someone with clean hands, unflagged credentials." He stared at her. "You mean me?" The next morning, Aiden boarded a black SUV with Naomi and two SkyGrid engineers. They drove in silence to a nondescript building near Palo Alto, surrounded by fences and guarded by biometric gates. Inside, the air was cold, dry, sterile. Aiden stepped into the terminal room. Wall-sized monitors, white light everywhere, and in the center, the core access pod. He slid his ID across the scanner. "Welcome, Aiden Ward Sinclair. Root protocol active." He sat down, hands trembling slightly. At first, everything looked normal. Flight logs, score patterns, crew behavior charts. But then he saw something strange. A record from a domestic flight in Idaho had been edited. A passenger's score had been changed, from unfairly flagged to justified removal. He clicked deeper. The timestamp was 48 hours after the incident, but showed a live override. That's impossible. SkyGrid logs all live data within a 90-second window. Anything after that is considered audit-locked, unless someone with high-level access had manually forced the timestamp. Aiden cross-referenced the access key. It wasn't Naomi's, and it wasn't his. It belonged to someone inside the SkyGrid compliance team. He leaned back, heart pounding. Not just a hacker, a traitor. He called Naomi immediately. "We've got an internal breach, compliance side. Someone's laundering ethics scores after incidents." "Are you sure?" "Positive. I'm sending the access fingerprint now." She checked it on her end, then froze. "Aiden, this access key, it's Dylan's." "Who?" "Dylan Rhodes, one of the lead ethics analysts. He's been on payroll since beta." Aiden's voice dropped. "You trust him?" "I did." They called an emergency board meeting within the hour. Dylan was summoned, still unaware. He entered the room casually, coffee in hand, blazer crisp, smile easy. Naomi didn't waste time. "We found your access logs." His smile faltered, just a flicker. "Excuse me?" "You manually edited ethics scores post-incident. You falsified timestamps. You breached audit lock." Dylan paused, then sighed. "You weren't supposed to find that." "Why?" Aiden asked, voice sharp. Dylan looked at him, and what he said next chilled the room. "Because SkyGrid was never supposed to be about fairness. It was supposed to be about control." He turned to Naomi. "You think you're protecting people. You're not. You're building a surveillance state. I just wanted to restore balance." "By lying," Aiden snapped. "By reminding the world that not every glitch needs to be a scandal, that sometimes the system needs help seeing the right outcome." Naomi stood slowly. "You're fired, effective immediately. Your access is revoked, and you'll be investigated federally for data tampering." Dylan gave a small smile. "Then I guess we'll see what the courts think of your perfect little god machine." He walked out. That night, Naomi and Aiden sat in the dark. No words. Then she whispered, "He's not the only one, you know." Aiden looked over. "What do you mean?" "This wasn't just one betrayal. It's systemic, coordinated. They want SkyGrid to fall, not because it's broken, but because it works." Silence. Then Aiden said, "Then we make it stronger. Not perfect, but untouchable. We double every check, add third-party audits. And we name the next version after the only person who would have seen this coming." Naomi turned. "Your father?" He nodded. "Yeah, call it Warden Protocol." The DC sky was a dull slate of gray as the car pulled up outside the Capitol. Aiden watched the raindrops streak down the tinted window, each one like a countdown to something he hadn't asked for, but couldn't walk away from anymore. Naomi sat next to him, uncharacteristically quiet. Inside her briefcase, legal memos, ethics audit data, whistleblower statements. But what mattered now wasn't the evidence. It was perception. And perception was being rewritten faster than SkyGrid could log it. 3 days earlier, someone had leaked a classified internal SkyGrid memo. A memo Aiden had written. A private diagnostic about system vulnerabilities, user flag bias, and regional performance discrepancies. Normal stuff. Every system has internal QA reports, but the media twisted it. Whistleblower reveals bias in SkyGrid. Rich passengers unfairly protected. Teen CEO admits system can be exploited. Government launches probe. Now, headlines were running wilder than flight delays on Christmas Eve. Naomi had warned him. "They're not here to find the truth. They're here to make you the villain." Inside the committee hearing room, cameras clicked and buzzed. Senators whispered to aides. On the screens above, a freeze frame of Aiden from the ethics panel, mouth half open, looking more uncertain than confident. Naomi leaned in. "They want a soundbite. Don't give it to them. Just be calm. Be you." He nodded. But in truth, he felt like he was stepping into a lion's den. The hearing began. Senator Green, a man with the kind of smooth voice that made people believe lies, addressed the room. "We're not here to condemn innovation. We're here to understand how a 15-year-old boy was granted sole override access to a federal aviation framework, one that now controls the fate of millions of passengers daily." Aiden's stomach twisted. Then came the real attack. Senator Brandt, from Texas. Sharp suit, sharper smile. "Young man, SkyGrid has flagged over 3,200 incidents in the last 60 days. That's up 18% from the previous cycle. Are we to believe that discrimination on airlines has somehow increased overnight? Or that your system is overreaching, flagging harmless crew behavior as misconduct?" Aiden didn't flinch. "With respect, Senator, the problem isn't that incidents are increasing. It's that we're finally seeing them." "Or are you creating them?" Brandt countered. The room went still. Aiden glanced at Naomi, who gave him a small nod. He leaned into the mic. "When a black grandmother is told she can't sit next to her own grandson, that's not a glitch. When a disabled child gets duct taped to a seat because the flight crew doesn't want to hear him cry, that's not a misunderstanding. SkyGrid didn't invent these stories. It just made them impossible to ignore." A quiet murmur rippled through the room. Senator Brandt wasn't done. "Let's talk about funding. Isn't it true that your mother, Naomi Sinclair, controls several ESG compliance networks that benefit from SkyGrid's ethics rankings?" There it was. The personal attack. Aiden took a breath. "My mother co-authored the SkyGrid Charter to enforce dignity in aviation. She doesn't profit from unethical ratings. In fact, every compliance freeze hurts our own partnerships. But we don't back down because it's inconvenient. We back truth, even when it costs." The room shifted again. One senator adjusted his notes. A journalist tapped something quickly into their phone. But the final question came from Senator Whitaker, older, slower, but razor sharp. "What gives you, a 15-year-old, the right to decide what is ethical in a federal system?" Aiden didn't blink. "Nothing gives me the right, but everything gives me the responsibility. I didn't build SkyGrid. My father did, and he died before he could finish it. I just refuse to let his vision be buried by people who are scared of fairness." That line landed hard. The room went silent. Whitaker nodded once, quietly. "Let the record reflect the statement." After the hearing, reporters swarmed. "Aiden, do you think SkyGrid will survive the Senate pressure? Is it true you flagged a senator's private flight last week? Are you afraid of being removed from the project?" Aiden didn't stop walking, but Naomi did. "You want a quote? Here's one. Every time a seat is denied because of race, class, or silence, SkyGrid is watching, and so is the world." That night, back in their suite, Naomi poured tea while Aiden sat on the couch, half zoned out from the chaos. She handed him a cup and said quietly, "You held your own today." "Did I? Better than most grown men I've seen under fire." He cracked a smile, then looked at her, serious. "They're going to keep coming, aren't they? Harder than ever." "Then I don't want to hide anymore." Naomi set her cup down. "What do you mean?" "I want to speak, publicly. A real address. Not interviews, not panels, just us, on camera, telling the story, from the beginning." Naomi studied him, then slowly nodded. "Then let's start writing." The lights backstage were dim, but the energy was electric. Aiden stood in front of a full-length mirror, straightening the collar of his white button-down. His palms were a little sweaty, not from fear, but because he knew what this night meant. The message wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to every kid who had been told they didn't belong. Every parent who'd watched their child be treated like baggage. Every silent passenger who thought, if I speak up, I'll get thrown off too. Naomi was on her phone across the room, talking low, pacing. Her posture was tighter than usual. Aiden looked over. Something wrong? She didn't answer right away. Then, we have a problem. SkyGrid just received a priority strike alert. Level 3. His stomach dropped. Is it internal? External. Global routing anomaly. They're trying to spoof node locations. Someone's attacking the ethics registry. How bad? Bad enough that I almost told them to cancel the speech. Aiden walked over, calm but sharp. We don't stop. That's what they want. We speak and SkyGrid holds at the same time. Naomi hesitated, then handed him her tablet. Then you're doing both. On screen, a blinking map showing live ethics nodes across North America. One by one, red flags were lighting up. Nodes showing erratic behavior. They're flooding the network with false ethics reports. If it overloads, the system could be deemed unreliable by the FAA. Aiden pulled up the emergency protocol window. I can isolate them mid-speech, route the ethics core to satellite backup. Naomi blinked. You're serious? If we go down during my speech, they'll bury us. But if we survive it in real time, we become unshakable. She looked at him, then nodded. You've got 5 minutes. The stage manager peeked in. 3-minute warning. The auditorium was packed. Every major network was live. A scrolling ticker on CNN read, Teen Tech Air to speak after Senate hearing sparks ethics debate in airline industry. Aiden stepped toward the curtain, tablet in hand, heart pounding. Naomi whispered, Remember, you're not speaking for SkyGrid. You are SkyGrid. The lights came up. Applause broke out. And Aiden Sinclair walked on stage. He stepped to the podium, took a breath. Good evening. My name is Aiden Sinclair. I'm 15 years old, and I'm the reason 152 flights were grounded 3 weeks ago. Soft chuckles rippled through the crowd. He smiled slightly. I didn't crash the system. I revealed the system was already crashing people. As he spoke, his eyes never left the audience, but beneath the podium, his fingers moved across the tablet. Routing isolated. Node ID. 7C Delta rerouted. Firewall holding. 2 months ago, I was removed from a VIP seat on a plane, not because I was disruptive, not because I didn't belong there, but because I didn't look like I belonged. That day, something changed, not just in me, but in the system my father built. Cut to network feeds across the country, an elderly woman in Michigan watching on her kitchen TV, a group of high schoolers live streaming in Brooklyn, a flight attendant, off duty, watching from her couch with tears in her eyes. SkyGrid isn't perfect, but for the first time we have a system that doesn't judge people by income, accent, or age. It judges by behavior. It doesn't ask who paid the most. It asks who showed up with dignity. Backstage, Naomi's phone buzzed. An encrypted alert. Her blood ran cold. Aiden, she said softly, stepping into the light beside the curtain. They're trying to breach your node. On stage, Aiden barely paused. Some will say I'm too young, that I don't understand the politics, the pressure, the nuance. But you don't need to be old to know what disrespect feels like. You don't need a title to demand fairness. Tap, tap, tap. New breach detected. Aiden's eyes flicked briefly to the tablet. Then, he smiled. And to those trying to bring this system down right now, I see you. Actually, we all do. Because transparency isn't a bug. It's the whole point. The crowd broke into applause. Live tweets surged. At SkyGrid live speech, a dignity in flight final line. The crescendo. We all fly different paths, but dignity is not first class or economy. It's not silver status or private lounges. It's not reserved for the rich or the loud. Dignity is row 29, seat F. Holding a toddler, tired, but still kind. It's the soldier in uniform who gets asked to move back and doesn't complain, but deserves better. It's the grandmother who speaks with an accent, but knows more about Grace than anyone in the terminal. It's you, and it's me. And tonight, I ask this country one thing. Let's stop asking, do you belong? And start asking, how are we treating people, wherever they sit? The crowd stood. A standing ovation. But Aiden wasn't done. His finger hovered over the final command on his tablet. Lock ethics protocol. Global mirror backup initiated. He hit enter. The SkyGrid shield lit green. Live ethics backup confirmed. All breach attempts neutralized. Backstage, Naomi exhaled, then wiped a tear. In the days that followed, the ripple was instant. FAA announced SkyGrid would enter full federal adoption. 3 major airlines agreed to third-party compliance reviews. Congress scheduled hearings for a new bill, the Passenger Dignity and Ethics Act. But more than that, more than the policies, the media, the applause, people started paying attention. Flight attendants changed how they spoke. Gate agents hesitated before making snap judgments. Passengers began standing up, for strangers, because of one boy, one seat, and a system that refused to shut up. It started with a red envelope. No stamp, no sender. Just the words, "Don't trust Whitaker." Naomi found it wedged in her hotel room door, the morning after Aiden's national speech. At first, she thought it was a prank, but her instincts said otherwise. Back at SkyGrid HQ, Aiden sat at the conference table, a half-eaten bagel on one side, 5 monitors flashing diagnostics on the other. He was reviewing audit logs of last night's attempted breach, trying to pinpoint how someone had gotten so close to compromising their core ethics nodes. Naomi walked in, holding the red envelope. "We have a problem," she said, sliding it across the table. He looked at it, frowning. "Is this a joke?" "I thought so too, until I saw this." She pulled up her tablet. Senator Whitaker's office had requested confidential back-end logs of SkyGrid's private protocol system, under the pretense of national oversight. But those logs were never supposed to leave SkyGrid's internal environment, and they had been downloaded twice. Aiden leaned back. "Whitaker's been one of our biggest supporters. He even defended us during the hearing." Naomi gave him a look. "Support is a good cover when you're planning a knife in the back." Aiden's mind raced. The breach, the hearings, the sudden media storm after the speech. Everything had been building to something coordinated. That afternoon, Naomi arranged a closed-door meeting with a contact inside the Office of Tech Ethics, a mid-level official named Grace Nolan, one of the few people who owed no favors to anyone. Grace didn't waste time. "The leak came from inside the Senate Ethics Subcommittee. Your father's name is being weaponized again." Aiden sat up. "What do you mean?" Grace opened a file. Inside were emails from 5 years ago, dated 3 weeks before Alexander Sinclair's death. Emails between Senator Whitaker and Artisys Technologies, a government contractor and competitor to Sinclair Systems, the precursor to SkyGrid. Aiden's stomach turned. The emails discussed delaying federal adoption of Sinclair's original ethics framework. Mentioned a need to control the narrative. Referenced putting pressure on the board to distance from Alexander's proposals. And worst of all, a final line in Whitaker's last email. "If Sinclair won't back down, we'll make sure his system dies with him." The words hit Aiden like a punch. Naomi closed the folder, gently. "I didn't want you to see this yet. But you need to understand, this isn't about SkyGrid anymore. This is about silencing everything your father built." Aiden didn't speak for a long moment. Then, finally, "They didn't just try to kill the system, they killed him." Naomi's eyes welled. "We can't prove murder, but we can expose the truth." The next day, Aiden called a press conference. But instead of standing at a podium, he sat in a circle. No stage, no script. Just him, Naomi, and a group of aviation workers, disabled passengers, and tech students. He spoke plainly. They want you to believe SkyGrid is a threat, that it's too much power in the hands of someone too young. But what they're really afraid of is that for once, power might finally belong to the people who've never had it. Then, he dropped the files. Live, redacted emails between Whitaker and Ardisis, proof of lobbying to block SkyGrid's growth, and a personal statement. My father didn't die from stress. He died from being crushed by the weight of corruption. The media exploded. Teen CEO accuses senator of sabotage. Whistleblower files tie SkyGrid attack to defense contractor. Naomi Sinclair demands federal inquiry into tech ethics collusion. Senator Whitaker denied everything, of course. Held his own press conference. Claimed Aiden had forged the documents. It's deeply concerning that a system with federal influence is now being used for personal vendettas. But within hours, former employees from Ardisis began to come forward. One by one, anonymous at first, then on record. Yes, we were told to delay SkyGrid adoption. Yes, there were pressure calls from Whitaker's office. No, Sinclair's death was not natural. Aiden didn't need revenge. He needed accountability. A week later, under bipartisan pressure, Whitaker was removed from the Senate Ethics Committee. Ardisis' stock plummeted 38%. FAA officially announced that SkyGrid would become the mandatory ethics framework for all U.S. federal airport terminals starting next fiscal year. But the real moment? It came quietly. In a side room, back at Sinclair Foundation HQ, Aiden stood in front of his father's old desk, hands resting on the edge. Naomi came in, handed him a sealed envelope she'd been holding for years. He wrote this 2 days before he died. I couldn't open it. I wasn't ready. Aiden opened it. Inside, one sentence. If this system ever speaks without me, let it speak with integrity. He folded the letter and whispered, It will, Dad. It already does. That night, Aiden looked out the window of the HQ. The skyline sparkled. But for once, it didn't feel overwhelming. He didn't feel like a kid fighting titans anymore. He felt like the future had already begun, and the past would be honored. Not by silence, but by signal. The boardroom at Sinclair Foundation HQ was packed, but silent. Aiden sat at the head of the table, a tablet in front of him. On screen was a simple button, Confirm Decentralization. Naomi sat across from him, her gaze steady but soft. Once you do this, SkyGrid is no longer yours. No more override codes. No more silent control. That's the point, Aiden replied. It was never supposed to belong to me. The past few weeks had changed everything. The public outcry after Senator Whitaker's exposure, the testimonies from whistleblowers, the FAA's formal declaration of SkyGrid as the national ethics standard. But it wasn't enough, because systems built by good people can still be abused by bad ones, unless everyone is watching. Aiden took a breath and tapped Confirm. SkyGrid is now governed by the Ethics Commons, the system read aloud. All audits are public, all algorithms open source, all overrides removed. Across 152 airports, terminals blinked green. A message appeared on every crew dashboard in the country. This system now belongs to the people. Treat them accordingly. It wasn't a dramatic speech. No fireworks, no live feed, just quiet resolve and a new beginning. Later that evening, Aiden and Naomi stood outside the HQ building. The air was cool, the city buzzing but distant. Aiden looked up at the stars. He would have liked this ending, he said. Naomi smiled gently. Maybe, but I think he would have liked you even more. Aiden chuckled. We never got to do any of this together. No, she said. But you finished what he started, and you did it your way. Just then, Aiden's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I saw your speech. Thank you. I was in row 29F once. He smiled. Who was that? Naomi asked. Someone who finally got to be seen. That night, a ripple moved through the world. In Toronto, a flight attendant asked a teen in a hoodie if she was okay before she even sat down. In Atlanta, a pilot helped an elderly passenger to first class after learning she'd been denied water on her last flight. In Berlin, a tech startup offered to replicate SkyGrid for train systems. No press releases, no politics, just decency. And in a classroom in rural Colorado, a teacher showed Aiden's original flight video to her students. "What would you have done if that was your seat?" she asked. One kid raised his hand. "Give it back, but not stay quiet after." Another kid asked, "Did the bad guy get fired?" The teacher smiled. "He didn't just get fired, the whole system got rewritten. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or revenge. Sometimes justice is a system that finally sees you and refuses to look away again." Tell us where you're watching from, and let us know. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong? You're not alone. This is Telltales, where dignity gets the last word.